just to quickly repeat, in part A, we are showing after cold working, in part B, after stress relieving, and in part C, after annealing. So what happens in the first two stages of recovery and recrystallization? The long grains break into new grains and then grow into larger grains. On this next page, we are showing the same thing. If you see, it is the same thing, 85% cold work, aluminum 5657 alloy. But we are going to a very costly microscope called TEM, transmission electron microscope, and we are seeing only a few grains at 20,000 magnification. So here they are seeing a lot of dislocations and so on after cold working. Here, after stress relieving, we are seeing that the number of dislocations and so on has reduced a lot. And here, after recrystallization, we are seeing that some new grains are formed. Of course, at our level, when we are just introducing the first course and we are seeing these micrographic pictures for the very first time, we are not champions in this. This is just for your information. But if we grow up, if we do a second course in materials and advanced course in materials and do labs and so on, then we will see that dislocations and grain boundaries and other things can be studied, and they really help. So we are just again, very quickly writing what is done, but you know, right, that recovery is the operation of the first operation and so on inside annealing. Sufficient energy is supplied for the rearrangement of dislocations into lower energy configurations. And during recovery, the strength of the cold work metal is reduced only slightly, the ductility is increased significantly, and so on. So I am just showing you again, right, that this is the recovery thing. I told you earlier that we have explained it in such a lot of detail that now you read it and you don't have to worry too much about this one, because we don't know a lot about dislocations. But what we are saying is that dislocations here, all these dislocations here are piled up on slip planes. But after recovery, they are aligned. Here they are distributed in different places, but now they are aligned. So they look in a more better shape. And when dislocations are dispersed like this, there are more residual stresses. And when all of them are aligned and in a very symmetric format, then the stresses are reduced. Recrystallization, remember again, so you can just read through it. Recrystallization means that during recovery, the grains which had become larger in size now break up into smaller crystals, and the growth of these new crystals is called recrystallization. So you can just read through these and you will. Here we are just telling you, it is not a big thing again for us, that this is the nucleus of the recrystallized grain, right? And then it starts to grow and so on. But don't worry about these things, because first of all, we will go back to the chapter on crystal structure later. And secondly, at our level, it is enough to know that there are some disturbances known as, or flaws known as dislocations, and there is dislocation pile up on the grain boundaries. So this much is enough for us. And once we do annealing and we reheat it, then the very fine needle-like grains start to grow large, and when they grow to a certain large size, then they break up into a smaller portion. So for our level, this is enough. Here we are still doing the same thing, but as an example, they are saying that 0.04 inch sheet of 85% copper, 15% zinc brass has been cold rolled to 50% reduction and annealed for 1 hour at 400 Celsius. They will show you in the next figure, right? So this is now a real example, not a schematic, a real example, that this is an alloy, and by alloying we already know that the strength has been increased compared to pure copper, and then it was already an alloy of higher strength, then it was cold rolled, and 50% is a large amount of thickness reduction, so its strength has increased even more. So strength will be more and so on, but it will have long grains and so on, so they do annealing, and they do annealing for 1 hour at 400 Celsius. So therefore you will see that some things will happen. Let us go to the figure. So they are showing you the same thing that we just told you, that 50% cold work, 85% copper, 15% zinc alloy, but after 1 hour of annealing. So right, so effect of annealing on temperature. This is tensile strength. Tensile strength. If you do annealing at 200, the tensile strength is more than 500. If you do annealing at 300, the tensile strength reduces to something like 450. If you do annealing at 400, then it goes to roughly 300. So you see, we have told you that annealing is a softening process. It makes the metal more soft and therefore the strength decreases. So if you anneal at a higher temperature, then it goes down. But after a certain temperature, roughly 500 Celsius, if you do annealing at higher temperatures, there is almost no advantage, right? From here to here, from about 200 to about 400, 500, there is a major difference. But after that, the reduction in the strength is too low. So therefore, we should not do annealing at 600, 700, 800 for this. We should maximum do it for 300, 400, right? The ductility should be the opposite of this. If the strength decreases and it becomes softer and softer, the ductility increases. So that you can see elongation or ductility with temperature. At 200, the ductility is only 3% or something, right? And then it increases, and then it increases, and then it increases. At 500, roughly the lowest amount of strength was there, and roughly the highest amount of ductility is there. So this will always happen to all of the general alloys, that when you do annealing, if the annealing temperature is higher, the strength will be lower, the ductility will be larger. Here it is something else. You see, in the previous one, we were holding them for 1 hour in the furnace, but at 200 Celsius, then we hold at 300 Celsius, then we hold at 400 Celsius. So there we were holding for the same amount of time in the furnace, but we were changing the temperature. Here we are changing the time. So now this is time temperature curve, right? In a way, this is 1 upon temperature, but don't worry about that for now. Here it is at least temperature directly in Celsius and so on. So if you see, there is recrystallization started. Remember that recovery has been done. So at the end of recovery, most of the stresses are gone. But at the end of the recovery, then recrystallization starts. So when does recrystallization start? And when does recrystallization complete? So recrystallization starts here and recrystallization completes here. This line is for recrystallization completed, right? So now this is a time temperature curve. That if we hold it at 275 temperature, then how long will we have to hold it until it completely completes this? If we do it at 250, then we will have to hold it for some other time, right? That is how it is, isn't it? If the temperature is lower, we will have to heat it for a longer time to complete the recrystallization. So at 250, we will have to go here. If this is 100 hours, 10 squared, then this is maybe 90 hours. So if we go to 250, then we will have to heat it for 90 hours. But if we heat it at 275, then we only have to heat it until here, maybe 2 hours and 3, so on, right? So this is the time temperature thing. We told you that whenever we do heat treatments, then we can control the time and we can control the temperature. Another thing that we can control is the rate at which we are cooling or heating. That is different. So here we are not talking of the rate at a very high rate of heating or a very high rate of cooling. We are not considering, but at least we are doing experiments, and then we can find out that if we hold it in the furnace at 300 Celsius, then at what time recrystallization will start and at what time recrystallization will finish. Compared to it, if we hold it in the furnace at 250 Celsius, not 300, then at what time recrystallization starts and at what time recrystallization finishes. And if we plot these, then we get these straight lines and so on. But again, remember that this is a logarithmic scale, 0.01 to 0.1, then 1. So it is in powers of 10, logarithmic scale, right? So this side is logarithmic scale. This side is normal temperature. So now let us do an example. We have done general heat treatment, and especially for annealing we have gone into much more details. We have not gone at this level into a lot of details of the hardening and quenching heat treatment, of the tempering heat treatment. But if you are in mechanical engineering, you will do a second course in materials. This is called material science. The second will be engineering materials. There we will talk much more about heat treatment and so on, and we will do many experiments on heat treatment also. So therefore, at our level, we talk of heat treatment. This is one of the techniques to change the strength of a certain material by heat treatment. And in heat treatment, you have annealing, hardening, quenching, tempering. Age hardening is a separate one. In annealing, we have three stages called recovery, recrystallization, and grain growth. So now we have explained that to you in a lot of detail. So let us see this example. If it takes 9 into 10 raised to 3 minutes, 9,000 minutes, to recrystallize a piece of copper at 88 Celsius. So if we keep the furnace temperature at 88 Celsius, then it takes 9,000 minutes. Second, and 200 minutes at 135. So now we take the same metal, but now keep the furnace at 135 Celsius at a higher temperature. So now we have to do it only for 200, right? To completely recrystallize, if the temperature is low, 88 Celsius, then we have to keep the furnace on for 9,000 minutes. But if we increase the temperature to 135, then we can get recrystallization done in 200 minutes. So now they are saying, what is the activation energy for the process? What is the activation energy for the process? So we don't know the equation, but what we are doing, that they are saying, assume that the process obeys the Arrhenius rate equation. Arrhenius equations are equations in thermodynamics and science and chemistry of this type: E raised to some power. Whenever you have an equation of E raised to some power, it is called an Arrhenius equation. So here the equation is given. It was not given inside the text in the discussion, but here it is given: time to recrystallize. So this is a small t. Time to recrystallize is C e raised to minus Q upon RT. You know that R is the universal gas constant. Its value is also given. And capital T is the temperature in kelvins. So capital T is the temperature in kelvins. Temperature in Celsius is there. Add 273 to it, it will become. So capital R, which is the gas constant, is given. Capital T for each case is given. And we have to find the time to recrystallize. But these C and Q are two constants of the materials, that if you want to do heat treatment for this particular material, this C and Q are to be known. C is just a constant, but Q, you know, is generally heat. So activation energy, how much energy is required to do recrystallization? So that will be Q. So now your equation is given, and now you can pause my lecture. Think on it, and then solve it first, right? That the equation is given, one set of condition is given, another set of condition is given, and we are asked to find one of the constants. So please pause my lecture, think on it yourself, and try to do it, right? Please think on it and try to do it yourself. Once you have finished it, definitely that you are very, very sure that whatever mistakes I have done, I have removed them, and I am very sure that my answer is right. Only then you should go. I keep on telling you that all the examples that we solved during the class, all the examples that are there in the book, the best way is to just read the problem, hide the solution, and go back in the previous pages, see the equations, and try to solve it yourself. And don't give up, right? Work on it until you are mentally totally satisfied that you have done your level best and you think your answer is totally right. And then you go in and look into the solution. If your answer is right, you are already very good. If your answer is wrong, then you will learn where you made the mistake.